In 1845, two of the most advanced ships ever built disappeared into the Arctic. They carried enough food for 3 years. The finest officers, the best maps available, the latest technology of the age. Their mission: complete the last unexplored section of the Northwest Passage and secure Britain's place in history. But then, silence. Month after month, no letters arrived. Year after year, no ship returned. Rescue missions searched thousands of miles of frozen wilderness. What they eventually discovered became one of the greatest mysteries in the history of exploration. This is the story of the Franklin expedition. In the mid-1800s, one prize remained beyond the reach of even the greatest explorers. The Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic that promised a faster journey between Europe and Asia. Nations had searched for it for centuries. Many had failed. Some had never returned. But in 1845, Britain believed the impossible was finally within reach. The Royal Navy assembled what many considered the most advanced Arctic expedition ever launched. 2 powerful ships, HMS Erebus and APMS Terror. Their commander was one of Britain's most respected explorers, Sir John Franklin. At 59 years old, Franklin had already survived some of the harshest expeditions ever attempted. To the public, this wasn't just another voyage. It was expected to be the expedition that would finally conquer the Arctic. On May 19, 1845, the expedition finally left England. A total of 129 officers and sailors stood aboard HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. They weren't reckless adventurers. They were experienced naval officers, engineers, surgeons, scientists, and skilled seamen. They carried enough food to survive for nearly 3 years. Their ships contained heated cabins, reinforced hulls built to withstand crushing ice, and one of the largest collections of scientific equipment ever taken into the Arctic. Families gathered along the shoreline, waving goodbye, believing they would soon welcome Britain's newest heroes home. None of them knew they were witnessing the last time most of those men would ever be seen alive. As the expedition pushed farther north, everything appeared to be going according to plan. In late July 1845, 2 whaling ships spotted HMS Erebus and APMS Terror anchored in Baffin Bay. The crews exchanged friendly greetings. Spirits were high. The officers appeared confident. It was the final confirmed sighting of the Franklin expedition. After that, the Arctic swallowed them whole. No letters arrived. No supply ships met them. No survivors returned. It was as though the ice itself had erased them from history. Months passed, then winter arrived. Deep inside the Arctic, temperatures plunged far below freezing. The sea that had carried the expedition north slowly transformed into solid ice. As Erebus and HMS Terror were no longer sailing. They were trapped. The men had prepared for harsh conditions. They had food, heated cabins, medical supplies. Confidence remained high. Surely, the ice would melt in the spring. But spring came, and the ships never moved. Then another winter arrived. The Arctic had become their prison. At first, no one was alarmed. Arctic expeditions often disappeared from civilization for years. That was expected, but as time passed, the silence became impossible to ignore. By 1848, 3 years had passed. No letters, no sightings, no returning ships. Families waited anxiously. Newspapers demanded answers. The British Admiralty could no longer hope. It was time to search. What followed became one of the largest rescue operations in exploration history. Dozens of expeditions entered the Arctic, searching for a fleet that had simply vanished. Years of searching produced almost nothing. Then in 1854, Scottish explorer Dr. John Rae returned with astonishing news. He hadn't found the ships, but he had found people who knew what had happened. The local Inuit described seeing white men dragging heavy boats across the frozen ice. They looked exhausted, thin, desperate, some collapsed as they walked. Others never got back up. The Inuit also possessed silver spoons, forks, and other personal belongings that had belonged to Franklin's officers. For the first time, Britain realized the impossible. The expedition hadn't simply disappeared. It had ended in catastrophe. 4 years later, another search expedition uncovered a message hidden inside a stone cairn on King William Island. It was the only official record ever recovered from the Franklin expedition. The message revealed a heartbreaking truth. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror had remained trapped in the ice for nearly 2 years. Sir John Franklin was dead. 23 other men had already died. On the 22nd of April, 1848, the remaining 105 survivors made an impossible decision. They abandoned both ships, carrying boats, supplies, and hope. They began walking south across one of the harshest environments on Earth. None of them would ever make it. For more than a century, the fate of HMS and HMS Terror remained one of history's greatest mysteries. Then, in 2014, after decades of searching, Canadian archaeologists made a remarkable discovery deep beneath the icy waters of the Arctic. They found HMS Erebus. 2 years later, HMS Terror was discovered remarkably well preserved. Cold Arctic waters had protected the wrecks for more than 170 years. Inside, scientists found clothing, equipment, dishes, and cabins that looked almost frozen in time. The ships had finally been found, but many questions still remain unanswered. The Franklin expedition wasn't just a story about ships. It was a story about ambition, confidence, curiosity, and the limits of human control. Britain believed technology could conquer nature, but the Arctic had different plans. More than 170 years later, the ice continues to reveal new clues. Every artifact recovered, every document discovered, brings historians one step closer to understanding what happened. Yet, perhaps, the greatest lesson isn't how the expedition ended, but why people continue searching. Because exploration has never been about certainty. It's about asking questions, even when the answers may never be complete. The Franklin expedition failed to conquer the Arctic, but its story conquered history. And that's why we still remember it today. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries, subscribe to EvoliqExplainer for more extraordinary true stories that reveal the fascinating intersection of history, science, and human nature.